The Memphis Grizzlies entered Tuesday just needing a win. Any type of way you can get it. But they did that and they got it in a convincing fashion in a dominant win over the Utah Jazz. Let's break everything down in that game coming up here next on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I'm your host today, Damichael Cole, beat writer over at the Commercial Appeal. Thanking you guys for tuning in each and every day with us here on Locked On Grizzlies. Make sure you continue to tune in with us as we get towards the stretch run. Well, this is the stretch run. I think we're here ain't towards the stretch run. This is the stretch run. Make sure you continue to tune in with us through the stretch run as we head to the NBA playoffs here very soon. But make sure you remember that your favorite podcast now has a newsletter. Introducing the Locked On Grizzlies daily newsletter, the one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right into your inbox. Sign up for free now at lockedondaily.com. That's lockedondaily.com and start your day with the all new free Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. Today's episode is also brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. So make sure you go take advantage of that as well. The Grizzlies took advantage of a Jazz team that was missing a lot of players. No John Collins, no Larry Marketing. Jordan Clarkson, was out as well. And the Grizzlies did what they needed to do. They did what they had to do, won in convincing fashion. And in yesterday's episode, I talked about the fact that I wanted to see this team look like a team that was rested, come out with their hair on fire, and come out with some intensity. Intensity that we kind of been doubting. Watching the Grizzlies over the previous 3 games that they lost in a row, and even if you want to take it back a little bit further, the 4 out of 5 games that the Grizzlies lost. And you watched the beginning of the game, it really didn't look like that. So a lot of open Jazz shots. The Jazz were knocking down a bunch of 3-pointers, and it was like, here we go again. And it was like, it's the Utah Jazz. And I remember about midway through the second quarter, I'm like, the Jazz already have 59 points, and we're at about the 6-minute mark of the second quarter. The Utah Jazz have already reached 59 points. You would have been disappointed with them getting 59 for the entire half. And they reached that halfway through the second quarter. 35 point. I think they had put up 35 in the first quarter and were rolling in the second quarter. And Taylor Jenkins called a timeout around this stretch, right? Taylor Jenkins calls a timeout, and the Grizzlies just came out of that timeout looking like a different team. It was the rest of that quarter, I believe, Utah only scored 6 points. 6 points pretty much over a span of 6 minutes. So you're talking a point a minute. So that's like a 48 to 50 point pace for the rest of the game. And they were stifled, shut down. In the second half, the Grizzlies held Utah to 17 points in the third quarter, and Utah managed to score 21 in the fourth. So a complete tale of 2 halves defensively from the Grizzlies, giving up 65 points, in the first half, 35 points in the first quarter, 30 in the second quarter. Even, with them stifling it, pretty much shutting them down for the second half of the third quarter, they still gave up 30. But if you combine the second half of that second quarter, the third quarter, and the fourth quarter, the Grizzlies defense was locked in. There were some missed shots from Utah, but there were a lot of made ones, as well over the course of the game. But the Grizzlies were locked in on the defensive end, and that's what you wanted to see, right? That's exactly what many people want to see. You want to see the intensity. You wanted to see, certain guys kind of elevate their game, and I think we saw that in this performance from the Grizzlies. It wasn't just because of one guy, right? You talk about a team where 11 guys played. 11 guys ended up getting minutes for the Grizzlies. It was a 10-man rotation. And in that 10-man rotation, all 10 players scored at least 8 points. Cam Spencer got, like 7 minutes of mop-up duty in the fourth quarter. He had 4 points. But you take Cam Spencer out of the equation, the other 10 players that we're talking about all got between 18 to 30 minutes. all scored at least 8 points, led by Desmond Bane's 21 points. You got 16 from Scottie Pippen, 19 from Jaren Jackson Jr., Santi with 9, 10 for Jalen Wells. Off the bench, 3 guys at 15 points. Vince Williams Jr., is he starting to come out of it because he made 3 trades? We'll find out if he can stack another good performance on this one. J Huff with 15, Zach Edey with 15 as well. Solid all-around game from a bunch of players on the Grizzlies. But yeah, the defense was encouraging. 7 steals and 4 blocks. So it wasn't like they had their most aggressive, night of the season, so to speak. They were just sound. And this is with the Jazz pretty much making 17 3-pointers. To hold a team to 103 points when they made 17 threes, that's impressive. That's impressive. But you know what? I know what everyone's going to say. I know what a lot of people are thinking. It's the Utah Jazz. You swept the Utah Jazz this season, 4-0. Congratulations. It's the Utah Jazz. So you want to see them continue to build on this performance. And we're going to find out real soon. It's not going to take long to find out if this was some, fluke one-off performance or this was something that the Grizzlies will continue to build on. Because, again, the defense is starting to become the main talking point. Because we're talking about the Grizzlies' defense a lot here in a game that they scored 140 points and had 9 players. 9 players make multiple threes. That's the reason why we haven't been talking about the three-point issues of the past as much. Because they have so many players who've been capable of adding in that area this season. Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr., let's talk about them for a second because we entered this game saying we wanted to see those two guys step it up, right? Have some big performances or whatever the case may be. And when you look at the final and what I just talked about was this was a collective effort over the course of the game. Everyone was chipping in. Everyone had, moments where, they were playing really good basketball. We're talking about 9 players making multiple threes here. But Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr., what they did in this game shouldn't get overlooked. And I say that because in that first quarter, the Grizzlies were outscored 35-29. If it wasn't for Jaren Jackson Jr., they would have been getting blown out in the first quarter. Jaren Jackson Jr. was rolling. I think he had 10 points in that first quarter, looked unstoppable. And he had 19 for the game, and he was efficient in doing so. I mean, Jaren was going to work against Utah in this game. So you're talking about a game where he shot 8 of 12 from the field. And his numbers, 19 points, and this is while leaving the game early in the third quarter. He took an elbow to the face. I do not believe that it's anything serious. We saw him come on the bench, return to the bench with the Grizzlies in the fourth quarter, and by that point, they were up 25, 30 points. Wasn't no point of bringing Jaren Jackson Jr. back into the game. So I think he just sat the rest of the game out, for precautionary reasons. But we'll find out more if there is anything more to it, by tomorrow. So Jaren Jackson Jr., he played really good basketball. Then Desmond Bane, same thing. In the second quarter, again, the Grizzlies struggled, early on. Utah was making a bunch of shots, and Utah still couldn't pull away. Even with all the three-pointers that the Jazz were pouring in, they could not pull away in the first quarter. They could not pull away in the second quarter. Their lead got as big as 14 points. With the way they were shooting the ball, you would have thought they were up 25 at a point. But the second quarter was Desmond Bane. He had 12 points in the second quarter, highly efficient from the field. So what you had was Jaren kept the team in the game in the first quarter. Des kept them in the game in the second quarter. And then in the third quarter, you had 41 points for the Grizzlies, 41 points from the team. And you pretty much put the game away at that point. So that's pretty much how the Grizzlies wanted it. We talked about their 2 stars needing to star, and those 2 really upped their games in the first and second quarter, kind of to keep the team in the fight. You kept them in the fight, and then the rest of the dogs came in and to really end that game against the Jazz and pull away. So I mentioned it at the top of the show, but the Grizzlies not only needed to win this game, they needed one of those dominant wins where guys could rest, guys could get some time on the bench, because we haven't seen the Grizzlies deliver the quote-unquote kill shot in a while. We haven't seen them deliver the finisher. It's been a lot of close games. It's been a lot of grinders. Even the last time they played the Jazz, it was a close game. But this was one of those games where the Grizzlies said, we're not going to play with our food. We're going to eat our food. We're going to get them out of here. And fourth quarter come, we can sit back, relax, and we can watch our teammates who don't play much do their thing. And that's pretty much what they did. So big win for the Grizzlies. Every win going forward is a big one. They've moved up now to fourth in the Western Conference standings. We'll see what happens in the Lakers next game. We'll see what happens with the Denver Nuggets as well, because they're right. They're right in the mix with those teams as they battle, for the number 3 seed in the Western Conference. But coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies, we got to talk about Zach Edey's role. I noticed the difference in his role. We're going to break it down here coming up next on Locked On Grizzlies. But before we get to that, remember that today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by our friends over at Gametime. Look, there's nothing like watching basketball live. The energy, the crowd. I mean, you can hear the sneakers squeaking on the hardwood if you're there. And then, when you're in Memphis and you get closer to playoff times, the celebrities will be sitting courtside and all that. So if you want to catch a game in person and witness all those things, Gametime makes getting tickets easier than ever. Gametime's new feature is called Gametime Picks, which features out the fluff, shows you only the best deals on great seats. So you don't got to waste your time scrolling through all these different tickets and seats and things like that. Gametime Picks is going to show you the best of the best that's out there. Look, it's easy ticket shopping. Look, when I checked the Gametime app, there were some amazing deals on there with some huge games coming up, especially on the Grizzlies side. You want to get to a game in Memphis to watch the Grizzlies? You got the Lakers coming up. You got the Nuggets coming up. You got the Celtics. Really big games. Super deals. Gametime Picks even highlights super deals, giving you the best bang for your buck. Make sure you take advantage of this. And look, I'm telling you, it's no fluff. So with these seat views, you get good seat. You can check out the seat views before you even buy the ticket. No surprise fees. And it's the lowest price guaranteed. So take the guesswork out of buying your tickets right now with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Make sure you go download the Gametime app today. What time is it? What time is it? You know what time it is? It's game time. The Grizzlies made a notable rotation adjustment, and I don't know if it was a super big one. We'll see what you guys think. I want your opinion as well here. So let me know what you think in the YouTube comments as we talk about Zach Edey's role. Now, before we talk about this game specifically, I got to take the big picture approach. And Zach Edey has been a starter for most of the season with the Grizzlies. There have been games, we talked about it. We've seen him come off the bench. There have been games where he started, and we've seen him be, I guess you could call it bench or whatever, but he wouldn't start the second half. Brandon Clark would come in to start the second half or another big or whatever the case may be. So it's been an interesting season for how the Grizzlies view, Zach Edey. At the end of the day, he's going to make an all-rookie team. He's probably going to be first team. If he's not first team, he's definitely going to make the second team. He's going to be an all-rookie NBA player this year. But there's just been, some different, there's been ebbs and flows in how he's used. Everyone has their opinions. Some people feel like he needs to get the ball more. Some people feel like he needs to get the ball less. Some people feel like the Grizzlies could do more with helping him on defense, avoiding the switches onto the perimeter, so to speak. Some people say, you know what? He's not that great of a defender at the NBA level. He shouldn't be playing. It's opinions all over the place when it comes to Zach Edey and his value. It's very polarizing, and that's why the Grizzlies drafting him at number 9 was such a discussed topic because here we are. He's still to this day a player that a lot of people love, and a lot of people are saying, why did we pick him at number 9? But with all that being said, let's get into his role now. So usually when the Grizzlies have 3 days off, I'm looking for some changes because being around this team long enough, something's going to change. And it might not be in player minutes or things like that. It could be something they're doing more of. It could be something the team is emphasizing more. But Taylor Jenkins and his staff will really dive into the film over that 3-day stretch. But you knew something was going to be different. And in this case, Zach Edey didn't start, right? So he comes off the bench. Santi Aldama draws the start. Santi's been back for a couple games now from that right calf injury. So you get Jaren Jackson Jr. at the 5. You get Santi Aldama at the 4. So you got that lineup pairing, as the starting group. And, it's okay. Not too big of a surprise. Like, granted, I think Santi's been a better player overall than Zach Edey this season. Now, from an impact standpoint, I think we all can agree that the Grizzlies need Zach Edey's rebounding and things like that. It's very vital. It's important to what this team wants to be and what this team can be. But Santi's been the better player, floor spacer, all those things. So not really too tripped up about that decision. But then first player that subs in is Jay Huff in the bigs. Now Marvin Bagley isn't available. Brandon Clark isn't available. So it was pretty much between two guys. It was Jay Huff or Zach Edey. Jay Huff comes in first. Then I'm like, okay, Zach Edey should be in right back, no time, right? Because he subbed in for Jaren Jackson Jr. So you got Jay Huff, Santi Aldama. Then Jaren Jackson Jr. comes back in. Santi goes out. So you got Jay Huff and Jaren Jackson Jr. at this point. And I'm saying, oh. So the Grizzlies have made a couple big substitutions at this point. No Zach Edey. Now, Zach Edey did come in with about 3 minutes left in the first quarter because the Grizzlies subbed just that fast. But that's neither here nor there. But Zach Edey gets in with about 3.5 minutes left in the first quarter. Doesn't really make that big of an impact in the first quarter. Second quarter, same thing. Third quarter, a little bit. But it was the fourth quarter, pretty much the mop-up duty, when Zach Edey made his biggest impact. 12 of his 15 points came in the fourth quarter, finishing around the rim, solid. He did what he had to do to take advantage of that extra playing time. 5-8 from the field. He knocked down 2 3-pointers. One came early, and then one came in that fourth quarter. 7 boards, a couple assists. I think 3 or 4 of those were offensive rebounds as well. And he had 5 fouls, but also 2 steals in this game. So Zach Edey made a noticeable impact. And here's the thing about Zach Edey's role. I want to know if this is a sign of things going forward, or was this just a one-off to the matchup, right? We know the Jazz, they like to 5-out you. Walker Kessler is going to throw up some 3-point attempts. If Lauri Markkanen would have played, he would have chunked up some 3-pointers. Kyle Filipowski, he's going to throw up some 3-point attempts. Their bigs will shoot the basketball, and they will space the floor. So this very well could have been Taylor Jenkins saying, this isn't a great matchup for him. This isn't a great matchup for Zach Edey. Let's kind of pivot a little bit to some of our more mobile bigs, which the others are. Jaren Jackson Jr., Santi, Jay Huff are your more mobile bigs who are a little bit more comfortable being on that island on the perimeter. Now, with that being said, is this the Grizzlies saying, hey, look, the rookie isn't playing great basketball. We're going to give him some minutes here and there, but it's not going to be a starting big for us anymore. And if that's what they're saying, I got a little bit of a problem with it. I do. And look, I don't want to dive too deep into this topic. I want to give my co-host, Joe Mullinax, I know he has some things to say about it. I saw him make a post on X basically saying, oh, the Grizzlies don't play Zach Edey early, and lo and behold, they're getting dominated on the glass. And that's my only problem. Like I know that there's limited offensive impact from what he can do as a scorer and as a rim runner and things like that. But, and there's a big but in here, part of the Grizzlies' identity is rebounding the basketball. We've talked about it. We talked about it in our last shows. I've written about it recently. Pretty much all of the Grizzlies' best rebounding lineups feature Zach Edey. His rebounding percentage numbers, offensive rebounds and defensive rebounds, are drastically higher than anyone else on the roster. Big cat. You take him off the floor, sure, you can get some more 3-point shots up. You can get a better offensive approach or whatever. You are not going to be able to rebound the basketball well. And that's going to be a problem because the Grizzlies, it's part of their identity. So, look, I know he's not playing, the greatest of basketball, so to speak, in other areas, but we need Zach Edey on the floor. I'm not saying play him 30 minutes. I'm not saying close games with him or whatever the case may be, but he needs a role. And you got Oklahoma City coming in here next. You're going to play teams like the Celtics. They have some size in the front court. You're going to play some teams, like the Lakers, who, again, they traded away Anthony Davis. But, you better be thankful they did. Well, you might not be thankful because they got Luka Doncic. But with all that being said, Zach Edey and his role will be something to monitor going forward. This very well could have been a one-off, and I would have chalked it up as a one-off if he gets in before Jay Huff. That's why we had to point that out. Jay Huff getting in before Zach Edey was certainly notable, and Zach Edey ended up playing more minutes than Jay Huff, but he also played more minutes because he played 12 minutes in the fourth quarter. So again, that's something to monitor to going forward as we break down those roles. We're coming up here next on Locked On Grizzlies. We got to talk about a little mix-up between Desmond, Bane, and Santi Aldama. What to make of it? I'll break it down here, coming up here next on Locked On Grizzlies. So if you're on social media, or you're on X, you're on Facebook, or any of those things, you probably saw this video where I believe it was in the third quarter. Santi Aldama, Desmond Bane are talking on the bench. A little heated conversation. It looks like they're mixing it up a little bit, expressing themselves. And the result was, Desmond Bane, those, little strong arms he had. He shoved Santi Aldama, shoved him back, and Zach Edey, John Morant, Jalen Wells, a bunch of teammates end up getting in between the guys. They continue to bark at each other for a little bit while teammates are separating them, and they get in between them. This happened during the Grizzlies timeout, which I believe was in the third quarter, because Jaren Jackson Jr. wasn't on the bench at this time. So you didn't see this on TV. This was during the timeout. TV did not show this. So this is for the people who are on social media. They probably saw this. Now, here's the thing. When this stuff happens, some people are going to say, "Oh, the Grizzlies are falling apart." Some people are going to say, "Oh, I've seen a couple say, oh, yeah, we want to play them in the first round." Look at that team. Look at that chemistry. That's the team we want to play in the first round. Take it from someone who's been covering this team for a while. Fourth season now for me. I like it. I'm not putting too much into it. At least not yet. I like it. How much have we talked about it over the last 4, 5, 6 games, over the last 2, 3 weeks, really, if you want to go back even further? Pretty much since the All-Star break. So you can say for a month. The words urgency. The words intensity. I said some fans have said things to me like, they don't even look like they want it right now. You know what I saw in that moment? Santi Aldama and Desmond Bane. It's two guys that want it. Especially with Des, being the initiator. They're like, look, no one has to convince me that Desmond Bane is a good teammate. Been around him for a while. This is the same guy when, he stood up for Santi in the past. So in Draymond and Santi Aldama had a mix-up in, I think it was in San Francisco a little bit more than a year ago. It was Desmond Bane who was the first player to walk up over there and defend Santi Aldama. Same Desmond Bane who, again, a game against the Warriors, Zaire Williams had one of the worst games of his Grizzlies career. I walk in the locker room, Zaire's head is leaning down, pretty much looking at the floor. He felt terrible after the game. Felt like he lost the game for him. It was a game the Grizzlies really wanted to win. Desmond Bane is the one who yells across the locker room, "Pick your head up, Z. We're going to go out later. Pick your head up." So this doesn't change anything from the big picture standpoint. It's just two competitive teammates. Santi Aldama has also been a very outspoken teammate. It's nothing new. Santi was the one who said it earlier this season. We're playing soft against the physical teams. Paraphrasing, but that was kind of his, he used the word soft, and he pretty much talked about the physical teams. He said we're playing a little bit softer in those matchups. He's called out the team's energy and effort at times, saying it needs to be better if we're going to be the team we want to be. Desmond Bane's done the same thing. So you're talking about two players who I would say are probably, at least to the media, at least to us, two of the most outspoken, two of the most honest players on the team. And when you have that, when you have guys that have those so-called alpha personalities or whatever, they're going to call you out, when you're not doing what you need to be doing. You have those type of mix-ups. in sports. It's an 82-game season. I'm almost shocked when we go through an entire season when something like that doesn't happen. And for for the Grizzlies fans, this isn't the first time that Desmond Bane and Santi Aldama had a shoving match on the bench. It's happened before. And after that, they brushed it off. Just competitive juices flowing. Life went on, and we haven't seen, any negative effects. I don't see Desmond Bane looking at Santi Aldama being open and saying, "No, I'm not passing him the ball because I don't like him." When they're playing, you can't tell if there was some type of animosity between them. But I don't think that is the case. Again, competitive juices flowing. I like it. I like it. I've been one to say, like, this Grizzlies team, they really don't. To me, they just don't have the typical dogs that they usually have, right? Like, I just think back to 2022, right? That was the 56 win season. Dylan Brooks is mixing it up, with all the teams, and Steven Adams. Everyone you talk to the opposing teams, they knew we don't want to mess with Steven Adams. He's the strongest guy in the league, right? That's the common thing when people talk about Steven Adams. And then you had guys like Kyle Anderson coming off the bench. He's the outspoken guy. He's from Jersey. He's gonna talk his trash. Like, they had those type of guys. Before that, you had the Tony Allens of the world playing in Memphis, the Zebos. Like, guys, you weren't gonna come in and mess with. This team doesn't really feel like it's that same type of embodiment from those days. But you have players like Zach Edey who's saying, "Hey, I'm not gonna let anybody mess with my teammates." You have players like Desmond Bane, who, when Kevin Durant stuck his foot out and tried to trip Cam Spencer, Desmond Bane went right into Kevin Durant's face, stood eye to eye with him. Well, not directly eye to eye. Kevin Durant's like 6'10", Desmond Bane like 6'6", but face to face. There we go, face to face, not eye to eye, face to face. But the point is, it's just competitive juices. At least that's what I got out of it. If it turns into anything further, we'll look into it, and we'll figure that out. But I don't think that was the case. I think it's just two teammates. It's been those two a few times now. Like, this is not anything new. When you talk about guys being competitive, the little shove or whatever. But look, it happened in the third quarter. You know what else happened in the third quarter? The Grizzlies outscored the Jazz 41-17. So didn't really affect their play in a negative way. That's all I got on that. But yeah, Desmond Bane, Santi Aldama, two of the longest tenured Grizzlies players, mixing it up. I did not take too much from it. It happens. The game is the game. Don't forget that Locked On Grizzlies now has a newsletter. Introducing the Locked On Grizzlies daily newsletter, the one-stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right into your inbox. Sign up free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. Thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies with me on today. It's really appreciated. Make sure you continue to tune in to Locked On Grizzlies with us. Me and Joe Monax will be back together for the next show. So make sure that you come join us for that as we break down everything going into this big game against the Oklahoma City Thunder. But until then, remember that Locked On Grizzlies is free and available wherever you get your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Grizzlies is there. Until next time, I'm Damichael Cole, and we'll see you on Locked On Grizzlies.